We count the days. We're 2,367 days old.
But you know exactly how many days old Ramp is.
We do.
Why?
I think it creates this urgency. And it's easy to say, you know what, why not Monday instead of doing it on Friday? We want to instill that urgency to say, today is the only, day 2,367 we're going to have. We're going to make it count.
But first, I want to just talk about that number. You look at like $1 billion in revenue and then a $22.5 billion valuation. Is the math mathing? Or are we in some sort of like valuation hype cycle? What is happening? How does that work?
I think Ramp is just growing so unbelievably quickly. Over the last year, we've just about doubled revenue. The fastest growing public software companies, for reference, expect and hope to grow something like 20 to 30% over the next year. And so the velocity that we are growing at, combined with the scale of the company, is part of what's getting investors so excited. But beyond it, I think the unusual part is Ramp is actually growing even faster this year and doing it while generating cash flow than we did last year. And so when you combine that last with the sheer scale of the market, there's over $2 trillion spent in the United States on corporate and small business cards, which is just one of our markets, and we're something like 1.5% of that market. It's hard not to get excited about the potential ahead.
So hyperscale has been in your bones since even the company pre-launch phase. Yep. You and your co-founder, Kareem, sat down together and you said, we want to try and create a unicorn company, which is $1 billion valuation, within 18 months. Yep. No company in New York had ever done that before. Why such an ambitious goal? But you manifested $1 billion company because you did it. Within 18 months, I think you were there. And with 2 years, you had like $100 million in revenue run rate about?
It was, that's exactly right. From 2 years, less than 2 years from incorporation, Ramp had been valued at not just $1 billion, but $1.5 billion. Within 2 years of the launch of the company, we surpassed over $100 million in revenue. And just a few years later, last month, we just passed over $1 billion in revenue. For us, I think it's two things. First, you hit on this aspect of speed. We're religious about it. We count the days. We're 2,367 days old.
But you know exactly how many days old Ramp is.
We do.
Why?
I think it creates this urgency. I was always inspired. I think about leaders like Frank Slootman, who wrote Amp It Up and just talks about the default state of an organization. Unless someone is driving and leaders are creating tempo, things slow to a halt. The expectation is you decelerate. And it's easy to say, you know what, why not Monday instead of doing it on Friday? We want to instill that urgency to say, today is the only, day 2,367 we're going to have. We're going to make it count. And also, too, when every day you're thinking about what did we get done over the last 30 days, over the last 60, you can measure. And you can start to make trade-offs and constraints. And you can say, OK, when I look at my last month, these activities really mattered, moved us forward. Let's do more of those. And these other things, even though I liked it, were not as impactful. I have to say no to these things so we can grow faster. And so that's a big part of it. The last and other important reason for us is our whole mission is help our customers spend less. We want the same for our own company.
That's a kind of a novel idea. I mean, and I want to talk about that too, just the idea for Ramp and explaining it to make sure everybody understands. But it's flipping the incentive structure on its head of the way that corporate credit cards have traditionally worked, where it's like the more you spend, the more points you get. You're encouraged to spend more. You actually want people to spend less, which actually sounds like a bad business. Is that a business that's viable?
Well, it's some of the largest companies in the world are in this line of business. You look at JP Morgan Chase, an over $800 billion company, American Express, $230 billion company, proving that you can do great by getting people to spend. Now, I sold my last company to Capital One, and I learned how this industry worked, what made it great. But I found it so deeply strange that at the core, customers were working to make the banks just a little bit worse off by gaming the reward systems. And the banks were incentivized to go and devalue the reward system to convince people the points were worth a lot and then devalue it in the background. And we just thought this is a massive opportunity. What if actually we wanted the same thing as our customers? And what if our goal was not to go and give them the minimum points, but actually just help them spend less? You can compete on value, how much better than you make your business, not competing on price, who's giving away more. And so, I think that was the other motivation in attacking this industry. We believed, we didn't know if it would be us, but we thought at the end of the day, this is how the industry should settle. With companies working to make their customers better off and customers genuinely choosing the provider that's helping them grow. And I think that's been the big secret behind Ramp's rapid growth.